Welcome to Chapter 3. In this chapter we will be running our code that we wrote in Chapter 2 on the target. We'll actually run the same code. Now I'm actually opening up from the repository. I've downloaded it. And right here you can see I'm about to configure the project. Now, let me unhide that corner. In here I've selected two different targets from the list of the multiple targets I've worked with. So the first one we're going to select is the desktop version of 5.12. I chose that because that's what we run on the host, so we can actually see how a code runs on the host. And then I also selected our Raspberry Pi. That's the target version, the target host. We've already set that up earlier in this Chapter 3. So the reason I do that is I want to be able to sort of prove to you and observe myself that I can run the code on the host and then take the same host, just by changing the configuration, run it on the target. So the next step, because it takes a second for everything to load, is I'm going to go turn on my Raspberry Pi. You can see where it's displayed up in the top left corner right now. And as we go through, you actually will see it boot up. So, while that's booting, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click Configure Project. All right, we got our two selected. I'm going to do Configure Project. Now we have our project open, and we have our screen showing what's happening to the Raspberry Pi. Now right now everything looks right side up, but it's actually upside down. The way the enclosure and the mounting kit for the screen and the Raspberry Pi are built, they don't agree with each other. The feet on the enclosure are currently on the top of the screen, and the wires are coming out. Well, actually the wires are coming out from the bottom of the screen. It's not really nice. In a second, everything will appear upside down. That happens because we actually will invert the screen, but you'll see that. So everything is booted. I'm going to come over here, and I am going to build and run the application. So I'm going to click on the Run button, and we'll look at the compiler output. There it goes. And oh, I guess we're configured for the host. Interesting. Well, we'll click here where it says debug. This allows me to change my target. I'm going to configure for the Raspberry Pi. So changing my build profile really is that simple. Just go click and select the other configuration. All right, let me clean out my compile window. And give me 1 second. And we will actually go and build it. Alright, I lied. I already had built it. I just hadn't actually downloaded it. So if we look here, we can see, we talked about this earlier, our deploy steps. Right. In the text, we show you a different way of deploying. But right now I want to focus on how that one button works, how it does. And up here we now have our screen. First thing we notice, it's upside down. We talked about that. And give me a second. All right. So besides for being upside down, we say hello from Qt here. My name is, and an enter name button. That doesn't really look very good, does it? So what we're going to actually do is go through and change a couple things. What we're going to change is how we did our layout. So let me turn that off for a second. Go back down here. Let's look at our layout. As you can see from our layout, everything's just sort of placed there. There's no rhyme or reason. So if you look in your book, we will actually just explain how you go through and change a new layout. I'm going to skip ahead, mostly because, well, I can. So we're going to open up another version of the code. This is after you've gone through your layout. Let's open that up and see what happens. Go up, and we'll open up the final version of the code. You know, I'm always scared about doing this. I'm afraid, you know, the answers are in the back of the book. I'm afraid you'll just look at the answers and not learn. So please go through the book and learn. Again, we're going to configure for 512 in Raspberry. Let me clear the compile window. Now the last thing we looked at was the UI from the first project. So I'm going to close this up. I am going to actually go close the first version of the project up. I did a right click there. I'm going to close that project. So as to help you understand what's going on. Let's go look at our final form. In our final form, we actually see how we've placed spacers in a grid. So everything looks pretty. One of the exercises I ask you to try is moving the enter name button, and how would you change that. And I encourage you to go ahead and do that. But before we do that, let's get ready and see if we can make this look a little bit better on the screen. Alright. First thing I'm going to do, which you can't see, is I'm going to rotate that display 180 degrees. There. Now we can see our old display. That's what's still running, and I really should do that. I'm going to go back to my edit screen and look at my applications. You'll see I have a couple applications running. So this is still running down here, so I'm going to stop that by hitting the stop button right here. Notice our text is now upside down. It's that whole mounting strange issue. But think about it. It's good to know that you can use a couple of simple commands you'll learn later just to rotate the display so it fits your application. So if I want it upside down landscape, we call it, or if I want it one of the two portraits, I can change that in the code fairly easily. All right. Let's run this version now. Come down here, click the run button. We'll look at our compiler, build it. And I have done it once again. This is how it looks on the window display. Now, you may be wondering, can I get away with doing something like this? Let's show you a little trick. You can actually compare the two of them. The way I have my screen set up, you can see how the two of them look on both screens. So I've just done here, I've clicked, I've reconfigured for the Raspberry Pi, Raspy as I'll say a lot. Let's go run that too. Now we're building for the Raspberry Pi. As you can see, the compile line's coming up. Now we're deploying, and in a second, you can see the running on the Raspberry Pi. There's a little bit of text there. We saw it deploy. Let's take a quick look. Let's put these... that's not the way I want to move it. Let's take a look and put these side by side. There we go. You know, I think they're a pretty close representation. Now, off screen, because I don't have a third webcam, I am actually turning on my keyboard so I can enter some text into that window. 1 second. As I make the screen a little bigger. Okay, 1 second. And my keyboard is not connected. So let's just trim the video to the point where we show them both running, or skip ahead. I'll let you skip ahead. So here we see the final point with the hello from QT. I'll leave it for you to find out if I put my name in there using my little keyboard, if it works or not. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to working with you again in Chapter 4. Alright, this is a fill-in for Chapter 3. This is a section I couldn't do before. Now I got things working. And instead of recording the whole Chapter 3, I'm hoping we can just edit this in. Alright, as you see, I've enlarged the display from the Raspberry Pi. Now let's actually go in and enter my name. I'm working with a very small keyboard here, so give me a second. Alright, and now I'm going to take my mouse and click here, and it works. It's kind of cool to that. I mean, you're going to see some more cool things, but I think the first time you see the code you wrote run on a target is always exciting. So, thank you very much for joining me for this chapter, and feel free to play around a little bit, learn something. And I am going to say goodbye, and I will see you in Chapter 4. Thank you.